Welcome back to the TGS Podcast. Today we're going to be doing a bit of season in review, aren't we, Tim?
We are. Sitting here in the winter, looking like it's winter.
Yeah, the February blues.
Yes.
British Shooting Show is gone.
Yeah, British Shooting Show is gone. Great show. Packed, as usual.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely the cheapest, best day out in all of shooting. That's easy to say. There's nothing else you can do in shooting for 30 quid.
Yeah, that's actually quite true.
Yeah, kind of knocks the middle of February out. Otherwise, it's all a bit morose, isn't it?
Gets us out of Valentine's Day if you stay away on the Friday night.
Yeah, that was a touch awkward, wasn't it? Anyway, so yeah, season in review, mate. We've spoken about a few of our adventures, but I just thought it'd be cool to catch up and learn about what the industry felt about it, how keepers felt about it, how birds were, how deer have been over the winter, and, well, some of the adventures we have both been on.
Well, I think your adventures are probably more exciting than mine, Johnny.
Yeah, but way fewer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you are like the international jet setter of sporting at the minute. Bit like a shit Austin Powers.
I mean, the glasses. I've got the teeth and the glasses. I'm halfway there.
I think generally, to make across the board, I think it's one of those seasons from a gamekeeping point of view, not a shooter's point of view, and I think we need to split it into. I think we need to split it into that. We need to split it into game management, and we need to split it into pulling the trigger.
I mean, from a personal point of view, it is literally personal, because if someone's had a bad season because they've had some bad days as a shooter, or just didn't shoot, or had some bad weather, it's real hard. Like, every season is so personal. And so, you know, speaking to people, the general vibe is always, it was all right. Because you speak to some people saying, they had the best season ever, I shot here, and some people, I got fogged off.
Yeah, fogged off.
People did get fogged off this year, actually.
It was a weird year for weather. I think my take home from spending the last 3 weeks, you know what it's like in February. January's relatively quiet.
All the keepers come out the woodwork.
With my day job, with the NGO. I'm having a lot of phone calls, a lot of inquiries. And you always say at the end, how was your season? And I think I'd say 80% of people had said, it's not one to remember.
It's not one to forget either.
It's not one to forget. Distinctly average.
Yeah. Well, you know what average is, though? It's average, mate.
Yeah.
That's so much better than bad.
Yeah. It's what I aspire to be.
Don't wish away your talents.
No. So I think from a game management point of view, I think there were some difficulties. I think there was some weather issues, not just with fog, but I'm talking about. And again, we got to look at game in a different. So a gamekeeper's season is different to a shooter's season.
I mean, it starts a hell of a lot earlier.
Yeah, it can start as early as May, can't it? You know, so
what is the general split now? I mean, when I started, most people reared, and it was seen as a luxury to buy in bolts. Now, I don't know many people who do actually rear their own.
No, rearing is rarer than it used to be. I think most people will buy Polts. And actually, when you cost it, the difference, the margins are so tight.
It's about £1 a Polt, right?
It's about £1 a Polt.
Which works out on a 33% return at £3 a bird.
Yeah.
And you get a lot less risk because you're buying a guaranteed end product. 6-8 week old pheasant and 10-12 week old partridge. And you know what? Your keeper is not tired at the first day of the season.
You do have to factor in quality of life into that as well. I think if you've got a big keeping team, it's not as problematic as it is.
Well, basic human rights nowadays, as we found out in the last episode.
We found out, took and delivered. So paper is a human right.
Rearing should be a human right as well, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, unless you're a game farmer, then it's fundamental to your business. So
yeah, you can't be accountable for the choices people make.
Well, you could choose not to have paper.
This is true, or you could choose to have it by law.
Yes.
Does that count like when you go into a restaurant, by the way, and they like make you sign it one of them things, and you're like, can I do this by hand? Because then I can write illegibly and they'd never know who I was.
Well, I just assumed because it was you were talking about the crayons and the colouring bit.
No, that's why I order for starters.
Yeah, can I have purple, please?
Now, orange is the best because it's flavoured with orange oil, a bit like the Smarties. No, it's M&M's. M&M's. Is it M&M's or Smarties? Smarties. Orange Smart. You've never eaten Smarties?
No, I've never eaten a crayon. God, you can tell we got nothing to talk about tonight.
We've got a lot to talk about, but I think the thing is we both said we deserve an episode of just having a bit of a giggle. Like, we've spoken about such serious stuff for every episode so far because there's a huge amount of serious topics that do need to be covered. And it is the end of the season. I thought, like I said, let's celebrate and talk about some of the good times and deviate and not like feel too restricted by rules.
Like, let's make a podcast that people actually want to listen to.
More people are buying in because it's just more efficient.
I think so, definitely. I think, it might be more efficient. I think you hit the nail. There's less risk.
It's fixed cost.
Yeah, you got your fixed costs. You know what they're going to be. The game farmer That's what they do for a living. Keepers are very good at rearing. But I think if you're going to rear...
It's economies of scale with rearing, isn't it?
There is of course, and the fewer you do, the more expensive it is. But also, you've got to have time to do that conservation work. And I know we weren't going to be serious tonight, but...
No, but it's vitally important, right?
It really is, especially in the modern...
Conservation work and just, the part that is making this sort of the estate looks nice. Like, those that in conservation work kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
I wish I'd have done that extra bit of, like, hedge laying. I wish I'd have chopped those trees. I wish I'd have planted that cover up because that would come in handy in 5 years' time. All these things... They do take time, depressingly.
Yeah, I wish I'd spent more time doing that predator control, trapping those rats. And
what's the last thing you want to do when you do your midnight checks? Go out with the rifle because you're going to be up at 4 a.m. for the next check in the middle of July.
You used to rear a lot of birds when you were younger.
It wasn't fun.
No,
I mean, it was also not fun, right? Because this was most rearing setups now are way more advanced. This was still with like 4-foot pen sections and like 4-foot wire, and then you're basically crawling around. I'm a tall boy. I was not actually so. Fun fact of the day, when I left college, I was 5'11", 5'10", at 18, yeah. Well, it was just before 18, but yeah, basically 18.
It's like normal person size.
Yeah, and so I remember when I met Ant up with Ant again a decade later, he's like, what happened to you? I'm like, I don't really know. But now just imagine, even at like that, I was probably, let's say 6'1", something like that, walking around you're carrying a bag over your shoulder, bent double over. All I remember is no happiness. I know people who love rearing.
Yeah,
don't.
I got friends who love rearing. So a few things really annoyed me about rearing. Rearing pheasants was one thing that really annoyed me about rearing. One was the bobble on top of your baseball cap.
Like, there is a throwback. How many times you lose it and it falls in the only seagull dropping you can find? Like a wet, sticky one.
So that's only relevant to anyone that's ever walked through a pheasant pen, rearing field rather, with a baseball cap on, because they catch on the net, for those of you who haven't reared, and the cap flips off backwards off your head and basically...
It's like, what, 50mm netting, something like that, isn't it? Yeah, just big enough.
Just enough to catch a cat, and it falls in pheasant shit, which you don't notice. You then put it back on your head. And
I'm looking at the wall of baseball, is there any without a button? Some of those flex fit ones, I swear, come without.
Well,
but
maybe.
I can't see.
They're hard to find. Anyway, that should be called
easier to just not do rearing.
Yeah, it is, just purely because you get pheasant poo on your base.
Unless it's your game, right? Unless it's your game.
Yeah. So rearing's got its place, and some people are really good at it. Some people like. And actually, if we go back for security, we look back to 3 years ago to the massive outbreak of bird flu in France, when no one could get any birds. Those guys that were rearing and made that decision and had their laying flock had a season. Some that relied on imports from abroad.
There's definitely a nice self-sufficient thing to rearing. But I think, as we said, it's really efficient to do it on a big scale. It's quite costly to do it properly on a smaller scale.
Absolutely.
And so if you're looking at, most shoots aren't like flush with tons of cash to just spend on the best stuff.
Yeah, but I also think you've got to, when you're looking at it, if you're looking at rearing, and especially if you're an owner out there, or you're someone that runs a shoot out there and you've got a keeper, or you're keeping yourself, I would honestly look at the quality of life, because it's not just 6 weeks. You've got to build the rearing field. You've got to get the birds through it. You've got to take the rearing field down. You've got to take the stress, the late nights, the early mornings. And then you've got to do that again when they're at wood.
Yep.
And it makes it really hard work. And I think sometimes that's why that persona of the grumpy gamekeeper, they're not grumpy, they're exhausted.
Yeah, right. I think that's totally fair. And it's a touch socialist to say this, and I know that's less popular with some people. I'm going for it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hold on to
the red flag. The red flag's coming.
Yeah,
I can't help myself. It's been a while. At the end of the day, unless it's your business, you ain't profiting by working 20 hours a day. Yeah. And when you die or have a breakdown or end up in hospital, you are kind of replaceable. It's not fair it's not easy to say, but at the end of the day, your quality of life is super important. Your mental health is super important. And you know what? If the shoot loses a couple of grand, for the shoot to look way better and for you to be way happier, that seems like a fair trade.
Yeah, as the employee.
As the employee. Yeah, I can put my employer's hat on if you like. As you know, I'm militantly bad, bullying, nasty manager. It's not fair to, I don't know, it's not like it's twice the price.
I think, I don't personally, and I am involved in running a shoot as well as my real job with the NGO. Personally, I would never see rearing as an economic driver for the business to succeed.
Unless you're doing a lot.
And I had a lot of staff.
Yes.
But our model is slightly different. We're not a small shoot. It would be classed as a medium-sized shoot. So it's over a large acreage. Not a huge number of birds. Enough to worry if you haven't sold a day shooting, put it that way. Economically, it doesn't make sense for us with the 10 to 18,000 bird range to try and rear those birds. Right, it just doesn't make economical sense.
I would have said it's got to start at about the 50 mark.
Yeah, I could.
Where it starts to be a intelligent option to do it, because at that point you've probably got quite a few staff and blah 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 blah.
And you've got some buying power on, you're looking
for
at,
feed and gas,
a ton of thousands.
You're using big sheds, which are way better.
Big sheds.
I like big sheds.
Has to be the way forward.
Big sheds, big nets.
Big sheds, big nets. But it comes with its own issues. So like we're saying, keepers thing starts in potentially in May.
If not earlier, if they're catching up.
Yeah, well, God, yeah. Well, they're catching up during the shooting season.
Yeah, this is it.
And then
so it's literally starting on the 1st of February.
Yeah, well, you've got your
season starts.
Yeah. So it's tricky. So if you're keeping an overwintered laying flock, or you've caught up during the season, you've got your laying flock from the 1st of February. You need to look after those so they produce your eggs. You need to pick up eggs. You need to clean the eggs, store the eggs, incubate the eggs, make sure there's no power cuts in potentially March. End of February, March into the beginning of April, where we got our big storm season.
Nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite stressful. It's not something that I would. Yeah.
Risk mitigation versus profit is always an interesting concept, right?
Yeah.
And if there could be a way to make up the shortfall, let's say it's going to cost you another £10,000 a poult, 10,000 birds, another £10,000. Is there a way that your keeper can bring you £10,000 worth of value in that period of time? Probably.
Yeah, I'd have thought so. With certainly, again, it depends if you're a tenant or you own it. The conservation work they put in. Let's say the game team.
And this is by the way, an employer who doesn't care about the value or quality of life of their employee going, it's £10,000 better that he stays here for a while.
Yeah. So let's say you make some improvements to some ancient woodland, so it's a better habitat for other wildlife. So it depends on the value. There's so many variables, John.
Planning takes loads of time as well. Remember, like. What's the first thing that, in my books, when I'm stretched for time, the first thing goes out the window is planning and just start winging more stuff because I know I've got it. There's no time to sit down and go, I tell you what would be really good. Like, I've got this, I'm going to spend 2 weeks of my time, because I've got no birds, battle plan for the next 3 years. Yeah. And I'll take it to the boss and we're going to say, I'd really like to plant a hedge here. Can I do that? And he'll go, yeah, that's a great idea because this is the result and the drive that we're going to have out of it. That takes time, right? Planning for the future takes time. It's a real pain. I wish it just kind of fell together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting point on rearing before we get to anything interesting to anyone else. Morocco.
Yes.
There's a game farm called Buscora. It's owned by the king. And the shoot I was at that we'll tell the story of later, buy their poults from him because it's the only place to buy them.
And he's the king.
Well, yeah, it helps to give the king some more money.
Absolutely.
Generally. They attribute the quality of their birds, and the story will come later how good they were, to the fact that we have bred out pretty much all the wildness in our pheasants and redlegs. And so it is just a little too domesticated. They have only been breeding to release Barbary partridge for 25 years, and they have been continually introducing wild-caught stock into them, as well as then replenishing those areas with reared stock. And so they are getting seasoned quality wilded birds. Yeah. And so these birds have wild brains, wild bodies. I've never felt a bird more muscular. They're just absolute animals. I don't like muscly birds. Soft. And that is an interesting thing. And I know it's not like there's a whole heap of places we could go in the UK and catch wild redlegs and pheasants, but they could be in the world. And that would be a real interesting case study. And I know that we've bred pheasants, certainly, to the nth degree, and you can get these strains of this and that. And I know that we import a lot of eggs from places where they do introduce more wild stock into the lines. I just thought, you know what's really interesting to me? I thought that was really interesting. Because I've shot wild birds, as have you, and wild birds are a different gravy.
They are different. But it's same with the English partridge, the grey partridge in East Anglia. There's parts of East Anglia where they're not as wild as they possibly could be.
And we're talking, in the fact that they've been
brood managed.
Done under broodies and...
Yeah, that sort of thing. And
they're a tamer product.
They're not quite the same as the genuine wild ones. So there's a very well-known wild partridge shoot, not in East Anglia, where the owner will do chicken checks on his keepers. The keepers are not allowed any chickens. to make sure they're not putting any eggs under the chickens,
Because
and to keep that stock genuinely wild. So
because it's so much more valuable.
Yeah,
Right?
and actually, I think it works better if you're trying to produce wild birds.
Yeah, if you're trying to just really
Genuine.
high quality single birds, great. If you want more birds, which I guess is interesting, we did a film the other day about how shooting has changed. Quantity has surpassed quality of bird, I think, in a lot of people's minds as the end result.
Qualities.
Quantity has surpassed quality
That's
of
really
bird.
interesting.
So instead of
since when?
I don't know. I'd say it's been a long decline. Like, it's a long change, right? If you look in the early days of them going out and shooting walked up or even on the floor, and then they shot them driven for the first time, and then they really went to keep more and more driven. And I presume it was just about also shortcutting by catching these birds and rearing under broodies, shortcutting it. And also, it's a lot easier to drive a tame a bird. Nobody's business.
And then more as well.
Over time, I think that it wasn't even intentional. It's just a case of, if you've never experienced wild birds, and that doesn't have to be necessarily wild pheasants and partridge or grouse, because we all know that's next to impossible gold dust to go and shoot, rightfully so, because it's sick. But you can go and shoot a woodcock for reasonable money and get a little taste of how exciting it is to chase a real wild bird. Yeah. And I think so many people haven't done that the culture has just changed.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. The reason I was asking sort of when, because can I tell you a little story?
You've got 45 minutes. Keep it short.
Settle down, Johnny. Just relax. So when I was a younger man, because I'm still quite young.
You're not old.
Not old. Definitely not. Although the optician uttered the phrase of, a man of your age has got quite good eyesight, and I wanted to rip his throat out.
I mean, if you look at me, I'm significantly. I'm younger than you by some margin.
A long way.
And my eyesight is
mine's
horrific.
Amazing, like Superman. Anyway, so when I was younger, I took a older friend who I worked with, who was in his very mid to late 80s.
Oh, he was an old boy.
He was an old man, and I would have been in my early 20s at the time, to a shoot in Devon called Hadio. Very famous
quite
shoot.
famous.
Very famous shoot.
You were an agent at the time?
I was just starting out as an agent. The guy who owned Hadio at the time was a family friend, so it wasn't a commercial thing. It was more to go and show this chap.
I'm just trying to paint the picture for myself.
Yeah. So we're going to call this guy Francis, because that was his name.
You are some storyteller.
Right, so we're going to call him Francis. So I took Francis down to Hadio, and we stayed the night in Tar Steps, etc., etc. Lovely evening. And we went and we watched the drive. And these pheasants flew off these Devon hills, and they were specks in the air. And we watched another drive. We weren't shooting, we were watching.
Just enjoying a day out.
Just enjoying a day out, watching the
very old-fashioned thing to do.
Very old-fashioned thing to do. Watching a beautiful.
Actually, having a shooting party. I was on a shoot the other day with a shooting party. Isn't it nice just to have?
It's just fantastic.
Have people stood around and stand around yourself.
We had a chat, and we saw. Anyway, Francis was leaning on his shepherd's crook stick, beautiful horn carved stick. Halfway through that second drive, these monster, like proper monster pheasants coming over. And I said, Francis, what do you think of these? What do you think of these high birds? And he looked at me, and these are his exact words. Well, my dear boy, in my day, we wanted to actually be able to kill the fucking things. So that's what I was asking.
I don't see it as a recent thing like the quantity. Like quantity, even if you look back to the early days of wild birds, quantity was very quickly.
Yes.
What, by the 20s, 30s, 40s, quantity was king.
Yeah, and then, of course it was.
But they were brood managing back then.
Breeding under broodies, and you had the Rupert brooder.
Yeah, they've done like a. I'm not saying that it's. I think I don't really know what I'm saying. I understand what I'm saying, but no one else needs to.
I know, I understand what you're saying.
Like the wildness and the value of the bird and the management has taken second fiddle to just boffing them, and that's not a bad thing. But I think because nobody's experienced a wild bird, they just when you see partridges come off a mountain or off of over a hedgerow, and you raise the gun into them, let alone fire a shot, and they go poof, starburst, and you go, that's pretty cool. When you get some big bomber redleg that flies towards you, turns and just goes down the line with shot flying at it, and you go, you're dumb.
I get what you mean. I think it's horses for courses. I think we can't. So because we've got such a different, the whole countryside managed different. We can't compare 1930s.
Yeah, I'm not saying we need to go back to wild birds, although that would be really cool. But it would also mean like
amazing.
people like me couldn't go shooting, really, which is.
I think it'd be tricky.
Yeah, it would be way less accessible to go and do. Yeah,
However,
you might be able to go.
Would need more gamekeepers.
Hey, see, that's good. And inherently, there'd also be little scruffy bits where you could go and shoot one over a dog, which would make me great for happy. So,
Yeah.
maybe Inherently, it's not. It doesn't matter whether it's a good or bad thing. Maybe it's a debate for another podcast.
Yeah, I
Whether
think so.
like returning to wild bird entirely would be a good or bad thing. It'd be
And
terrible
actually-
financially
it would be.
if you owned a shoot.
Yeah, it would be a disaster. But interestingly, John, I think it is a debate for another podcast with.
Per couple of people from each
I
side.
think with someone who runs a medium-sized, what we'd call a commercial shoot now, but a shooting enterprise. And then on the other side, maybe somebody who's really into.
No, we need to get. Well, the thing is, we also need to be two people who are adult enough to understand that although they may fall out, they can still be friends.
Well, I think they'd fall out because I think it's just a
They
different.
are polar opposites. A commercial shoot and a wild bird shoot are basically Mars and Earth.
Yeah, and I think it'd be more of
Light-hearted-ish, but
but
you
I
need
also
them to also open up.
Yeah,
We'll discuss it after, but I've got a few ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. But equally, when you say to people, so we do quite a lot of walked up shooting.
Yeah.
Based. You've been on them.
Yeah.
They're great fun.
It's awesome, man.
We chase a lot of woodcock and shoot some squirrels.
You see some cool stuff.
It's good fun, and it can be very productive. And we get a lot of people want to buy walked up shooting from us because it's relatively well priced. And
It shouldn't be, by the way. I was thinking this the other day. Like, it should be like when you buy cartridges. A box of 25 is more per cartridge than a box of 250.
yeah, you're probably right.
Like, and it was all-
It's about market forces and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and also I think that I do think it would be. It doesn't matter, but in my head, a walked up bird. People charge it at less than a driven bird. I'm like, you're shooting a lot less of them. It's not an
You're
unfair
shooting
thing
less,
to
you've
shoot.
got- You've got less costs and depends on your management. Anyway,
Yeah, but the experience is cooler.
so yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So it's about the experience. Now, so we get teams who come regularly and they know what it's about, they know what to expect, or whoever's invited someone has told them what to expect. They are such fun days, right? Because you've got guys walking a line, working a Spaniel or a lab in front of them, swearing because the woodcock took off in front of them and they nailed the tree.
Standard. Or it was that one time you decided to look at your
Look at your
feet a lot,
phone.
or look at the ceiling, or you're paying attention to a crow 6 miles
or
away. That's the usual
forgot
stuff.
to load the gun. That sort of.
Oh,
That
mate,
sort
I
of
was on a walked up day the other day and we were doing a film on it, and I get to this little brook. I was like, guys, it's really important that because you're on a walked up day, safety is more paramount. There's a lot of uneven ground underfoot. And so when you get to an obstacle, you break the gun, take the cartridge out, and you cross the obstacle. And I turn away from the camera to walk across the obstacle, and a woodcock that looked like it had some kind of disability, how far slowly it flew away. You know, like the lazy flight, the flop. It did that away from me. It got about 5 yards, and I could have closed the gun and shot it, and it could have taken 6 minutes. It would have still only been 20 yards away. What a
that
bastard!
never happens.
No,
That never happens. But like that, you knew what you did. But then we get the team of guns who have come.
for a bargain day, or
Yeah,
what?
I guess so. I think probably because it's a bit less money, but actually they want to stand on a peg, and they're disappointed. So it's about expectation management. It's about having them, and it's horses.
Yeah,
for
but you get
courses.
people. The number one pet peeve of mine is if you go on a, let's say, nowadays, an average-ish day, 200 birder,
Yep.
right? And someone goes on it. It's their only day of the season, maybe, and they're expecting a YouTube video's worth of shooting from a 500 bird day, and they then have a quiet peg. 8 guns, 200 bird days, 24 guns each, more or less, or 24 birds each,
Yeah.
6 birds a drive. It doesn't ever work like that, obviously. It's not fair sport. That's not the way it works.
Yeah. It's why it's called a team of guns.
Yeah, this is it. And it's tough then. There's nothing worse than someone who really, really wants their money's worth in we've taken a right detour here. But yeah, I've seen it on driven days. I can't imagine that on a walked up day. I'd tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
Look, you don't understand what you signed up for. The whole point of a walked up day is like shooting nothing and hoping you shoot something.
I mean, the thing I really like about shooting is the day out. It's the day with friends. It's the banter. It's the piss taking. Obviously, shooting, pulling the trigger's important. Standing there and looking at stuff is great, but
You want to
it's
pull
not
the trigger a bit.
of course you do.
You want a chance.
But it might be because I've been lucky enough through my life since I was 10 to have done quite a bit of shooting of all different disciplines.
Yeah, and that really helps when you have a bad day because you go, I had a lot of good ones.
I had some great ones. I don't remember the bad ones. I know I remember the really bad ones.
Yeah, I've had probably, I say that, some of the really bad ones are also where we've had the most fun because you suddenly have to really rely on each other to just have a laugh.
Yeah, I mean, God, I had a few years ago, I invited a friend of mine, my son's godfather, a nice farm at Salisbury. And we went shooting down in Hampshire, and I had 4 pegs, a friend of mine had 4 pegs, and it was the worst day shooting ever been on. So it was boiling hot. It was September. It was boiling hot. Birds didn't want to fly. It was just one of those combinations of things from when we got to where they'd organised breakfast for us. The pub had closed down
Oh my
the day
goodness.
before. To they forgot to bring any drinks for 11s. And it was like 30 degrees, but it's all right because they had the pork scratching, so we had plenty of salty stuff to eat that would dry you out, but no water. No. So the birds didn't fly, but it was probably the best laugh we've ever had.
Yeah, was it when you got nothing else to do?
It was actually so bad that the guy who hosted the day on the last drive said, "Thank you very much." He literally, "Thank you very much for coming, everybody. I've got to go and pick my daughter up from school," and got in his Range Rover and drove off and left us in the field on our own. So none
Wow.
of us didn't know how to get back. I'd never been there before. So the only thing I could think to do was phone the NGO office, in the name of the keeper, get him to look up if he was on the database to get his mobile number. So I phoned him to say that your governor's left us in the field. Could you come and show us how to get home? So he was really apologetic. He came over, we gave him his tip, and he pointed us the way out. Never forget that one.
That is, I've had some rotters, but never left in a field at the end of a day.
It was proper job. It was, we still, every time we see each other, if I bump into someone at the shooting show or something,
Yeah.
one of the team that were there, you always talk. Can you remember that day?
Yeah, but that inherently is somewhat special,
Mate,
right?
it's memory building.
Yeah, this is why we go out
Yeah.
in for many parts, right?
So, yeah, very.
And the toughest times, that's hardly a tough time, just having a bad day's driven shooting. You're not starving to death or anything.
No.
But, yeah, the worst experience, like when you have terrible customer service at a restaurant, you'll remember that forever. You don't remember average. That's why you don't want to be average. Circling right back to the beginning.
Yep. Come on. What was your... You've had some pretty spectacular days out.
It's been a pretty wild season, actually. That's a great question. It's got to be a toss-up. We've done a few days off camera I can't really talk about, which was sick. One wild game, woodcock on one day and wild greys on the other. Those would take some serious beating. But they're personal ones. You know, sometimes it's really nice to keep things personal. I mean, Pennell was insane, but it's probably El Kudia. I just came back it's a month ago now. Time flies. I was in Morocco for 2 days back-to-back driven partridge shooting. It was different, right? I used to live out there, but I lived about 5 hours north of there. And it's a pretty wild country, Morocco. It's twice the size, three times the size of England with half the population. And it's a little bit like England in terms of its diversity, right? England is a fascinating place, and it doesn't look that different if you just, look with, a wide stance. But England is fascinating because the geography under the ground and over the ground, what grows where and what is actually the subsoil changes quicker than most countries in the world. If you drive for 6 hours, you're in Scotland, and you've gone through loads of different stuff.
Yeah,
Loads of different stuff. And yeah, it's just like green trees and bushes and some brown mud, but it is very different. Morocco is a little bit like that, but even crazier, because you've got cork forest, you've got some swamps in the north, and you go down to some cork forest, and this is just sort of going down the west coast, and then you hit some dry stony area, and then you hit some dry stony mountains, and then you hit some mountains with snow, and then you hit some greeny mountains. And that's not entirely in order, but the whole concept is about right. It's very, very varied. So 4.5 hours north of where we were is where I lived. Green, lush, cork forest, lean bushes, dwarf palming areas, just green and lush in by African standards. This is dry stone desert mountains on the outset. But again, it's about leaving the path and having a look, and you've actually got tons of plants that only grow an inch tall, because that's what works in this dry climate. And you've got some nice bushes, and the partridges just stick it. That's where they live, right?
There's lots of invertebrates there, are there? Or are they feeding on seeds?
They feed them on wheat, but there's plenty to eat, I would have thought, when it rains. They've built plenty of dams, so there's lots of wet areas. They've tried planting cover crop in terms of grass. It stuck a bit, but these things all just hide under a rock, right? They're rock coloured and rock shape. It's kind of the beauty of being a rock shaped bird in a rocky desert. It's quite useful, isn't it?
Bit of a survival.
Yeah, you can. Well, I went for a wee. It's a great story. I went for a wee. We'd all parked up, a full shoot's worth of vehicles. People had got out 10 metres the other side of this bush. We're having a couple of beers, some olives, and this usual stuff. And I'm like, that looks like a good bush. I'm going to go have a wee in that bush. It's closest, but it's in the politeness range. The closest bush in the politeness
so you
range.
can't smell it, but you can see it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was well hydrated. You want to be able to smell this. Yeah, there's water everywhere. It's very great service. And I go there and I start weeing. And I literally, from the side of my wee, 2 inches away, a bird just stops being a rock and just walks outside us from no stop. And I was like, I love these. Barbary partridge are a pretty insane bird anyway. They are just a cool animal.
No, I don't know anything about them. What I do know
Yes.
is that everybody has got that friend who goes shooting with them, who you see their penis more on a shoot day than you see your own. That's clearly you. What was the shoot? So come on.
Let's spin it back round. So we're in this dry, stony. No, it's not a desert, but I suppose it's probably in the desert. It's almost a desert, I would have said, in terms of rainfall allowance. But you got some fairly big bushes, and they're that kind of greeny sage brown, like desert plants, which are fascinating. Everyone just looks at them and thinks they're dead, but they're not. They're desert plants, same as the plants that live in Scotland. Like, it's equally as fascinating a thing, a plant that can survive that kind of weather on top of a bare mountainside.
We're talking about some literally polar opposites here.
Equally as harsh, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like given that we're both from the south of England, where everything is pretty chill.
Yeah.
And I got sent some pictures before we went. We were going over there filming, and to be honest, I kind of thought this looks pretty. It looks all right. Like, we'll have fun, but it looks pretty flat and it looks pretty barren. But then you get there and you realise that the pictures of these mountains, iPhone cameras, unless you really work hard to take a picture with the right lens at the right distance, it's really hard to get the perspective of hillsides. Right, it's very hard to sort of show that these are mountains.
That's any 2D image. It's quite hard to give a.
It's very difficult. Right? You need to take it from the right distance, at the right angle, with something to give a perspective like a human, and you can just about make it work. But most of the time, it's usually a bit like underwhelming. They're mountains, man. These are, for a southern English person, they're mountains. Like, if you went to Scotland, that kind of mountain. I mean, not like Ben Nevis, but like, you know, a hill. If you went hill stalking, that kind of mountain, you wouldn't want to walk up it if you drop your keys up there. And so we drive on in, and it's sort of 10 minutes to the hotel, and he's like, "It's that mountain range over there." Pretty impressive. It's not mountains, foothills. Given that the Atlas Mountains are next to it, and they are pretty colossal, these are comparatively foothills. But they're big. They're very big and very good. And we drive on in, and it's dry, and we drive to the top of one of these mountains, and it's this old, like, shepherd's hut. It's not. It's a stone building with a table in the middle. It's
like a bothy.
Yeah, but a Arabic bothy. Beautiful. On top of the hill with some food and drink, and you have a little breakfast, and we go out. And we're driving down to the first drive, and this story's going to end soon because it's basically a rinse and repeat of the first thing. Driving into the first drive, we drive all the way around this estate. It's like 4, 5, 6,000 acres or something. It's pretty crazy. And the beaters are coming over this big ridge, mountain, hill. The Scots call it a hill. It's a mountain. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. We just round here. He goes, no, we're a bit away from the drive. I'm like, that's cool. We're driving a bit like partridges. I'm like, oh, so driving a bit like grouse. I'm like, cool. You're bringing a bit of area. Oh, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's going to be cool. Because it's quite sparse in terms of cover. You haven't got a cover crop and some food. There's feeders everywhere. They feed everywhere, and the birds just survive as if they were pretty wild, you know? They have plenty of space, and they do what they want. And they're driven accordingly, bringing in, 400 acres into a drive. Okay. Pretty solid on some of these drives. Some less, some more, of course. And then we pull in around 3 valleys later, down into a valley, and we get out of the car and walk. I'm like, I think these beaters are going to work hard today. Little to know, this is about the flattest part of the estate. And there's a hill in front. If I said it's like a Prescombe hill, that's pretty sizable, not mega. It sort of rolls over the top, and then I can see around the corner of it in the background. I can see the hills we drove past, and this mountain. It's not mountain, but mountain. And the beaters come over the top of that. I'm like, a mile away. It's going to be stood here a while. Bud gets off the top of that mountain, powers towards the line. It flies best part of a mile to cross the line 40 yards high. Doesn't stop once. Changes direction a few times, deciding where it's going to go. I never seen anything like it. Never seen anything. And I've seen these birds in action, and we used to push them a long way, but never, because we had lots of cover, they could dip in a bit easier, right? They didn't know, I need to get over there. There's my next safe zone. And so ours would fly, and they'd fly pretty hard. But I guess you also couldn't see them because we had trees. So once they're out of sight, which is pretty quick, you wouldn't really know. You just knew that they went out of the drive.
In roughly the right direction.
And this was not an uncommon thing. You know what I was saying earlier about like putting a shot into a pack of partridges, then breaking? Yeah. This is the only reared birds I've ever done that with. Bang, poof. Yeah. You'd raise a gun into a partridge, and you'd be swinging through it, at which point it would literally just dip a wing and go boom out the side.
A bit like a grouse.
Exactly like a grouse. It was the wildest reared bird I've ever shot at. And then I spoke to the owners. I'm like, this is pretty cool. Can you explain a bit more? And I knew a few of the things anyway about like Muscura. Genuinely fascinating. There's 2 days of that. The drives got higher, the birds got harder, and really hard to read, right, when they're coming off of ground with no perspective. Yeah. Is it 30? Is it 50? Is it fast? Is it slow? And these things could put the brakes on super, super fast. It's quite harsh sunlight. the light's shining through their feathers, so it's hard to know whether they're quite. It's hard to you can't make out an outline like you can against a cloudy sky and accurately range find. It's hard to accurately speed test them because you watch from the side of the drive and some are shooting up and some are going down, and you don't really know. It's such fun. Like, it was fun. You're not supposed to say something. It was such fun.
You're supposed to say it. You're allowed to have fun.
Yeah, I know, but it was fun. It was like super fun. It was such a test of. It wasn't like a test of skill in terms of height and all that kind of thing. There were some seriously good birds. You know, you could have shot a 70-yard partridge if you want. You could shoot stuff out the side. You could really play. But most of the stuff was 40 to 50.
That's still high.
It's a very solid partridge when it's coming down off a mountain at you.
Yeah.
And I watched back through the shot cam footage, and I was just. You know what I missed? Because I didn't read a single one right, because every single one was different. I hit plenty. But the sort of thing, you know, your average partridge drive, your average pheasant drive, bird comes out, bang, gill it.
Yeah.
Do the same thing for the next one, don't you?
Yeah.
Not there. Because it might look the same, but it's doing something completely different.
See, I'd like to experience something like that. But I've got a really weird, nerdy, technical question.
Yes.
Did the beaters have flags?
Yes, they did, actually.
And what were they made of?
So originally they used made of old sacks, and now they're made of old feed bags in the British style. Interestingly.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, because when they first went out there, apparently, and they took the shoot over in 2019, they were just waving sacks in the air on old, like, shirts.
I don't know why, but when you explained them coming over the mountain, I was wondering, are we looking at like, essentially a British-driven style beating team?
Yeah, very much so. And so
English
what's interesting...
keeper?
British keeper, and he goes out there 6 months of the year from release to the end of the season. They are going to start rearing, but they've got Moroccan keepers, shedikas, gamekeepers, land managers, who are there the rest of the time, getting the ground ready, feeding, doing their job. Very capable at doing it, and I guess it just takes essentially a British foreman to dispense knowledge from our shooting culture, which is pretty good. I know it's fair to say we're probably some of the best in the world. The reason that British keepers get to every other country is because we have it's a thing here, right? We're pretty good at it. We're very good at it. Another country doing it a while, but not on the same level. We're pretty good at it. We produce great workers, great keepers. Yeah, and so the keeper sort of is commanding the line from radio, but because there's certainly a language barrier, the beaters are all up there, and the shedikas are, or the underkeepers, keepers, agents, what they called, like countryside managers. I don't really know what the correct translation of shedika is. Guardian. Yeah, they run the line. It's pretty mega, right? And these guys do get some altitude. They get some miles under their belt. And, I mean, some of the drives were just stupid. Some were incredible. Like, just hard work shooting, but they didn't need to be high to be missable, right? Quality, sporting birds.
It does. I mean, just looking at you and listening to you, that clearly, genuinely, that did it for you, didn't it?
It was wicked, mate. And it was still raw, right? They've only started being sort of commercial the last couple of years.
Okay.
And they were selling to a few friends before. And so it's still really raw, right? You know, like you go to Spain. Spain's developed now. But when you first went there, it was less so. It was still kind of...
Oh, no, that freaking... Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, but now you go there and you're on a concrete pad with 2 sun paddles and 3 counters and a man to pop your drink anytime you want. And it's a bit too...
I really don't like it.
It's not my scene. I like getting down and dirty and just enjoying part of the culture. And part of it was, our loader spoke about 6 words of English. Maybe that's a fib, maybe 50 or 100, but not great English, but enough that you could like smile and laugh and point and stuff. And there was no pegs, so you were placed out. There's pegs on one drive, but the rest of it you were placed out. And...
I mean, also in the loader's defence,
cool.
John, I load a lot and I don't have a word of Moroccan. I can't blame him for that, can you?
No, this is it. And there was some great humour. It was just a great trip, right? It was with Sash and Tom from William Powell Gun Room and Ollie from William Powell Sporting. And it was just, we ended up having a lot of fun together. And, often when there's a group of guys, there can be, you don't always sort of relax in each other's company and start enjoying it.
Especially when it's thrown together.
And it's a work thing, right? But so inherently there's some pressure on them to produce a good day and pressure on us to make a good film. But it was just a really nice time. We had a lot of fun and the shoot was super authentic and just scruffy enough around the edges to be actually Moroccan.
Yeah, see, I think that would be quite important to me for the experience because you don't want to go to... I mean, I've shot abroad a bit, not as much as you. We shot together, didn't we?
You shot abroad loads, Pona. Sorry, you probably fished abroad significantly more than you shot.
I have fished abroad significantly. What you don't what I don't necessarily want. You want the experience of the country you're in with the style they want to do it, without it being shit.
Yeah, right. And that is the perfect way of putting it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
you want an authentic experience, but you want quite a good authentic experience.
Yeah, and that can go both ways. So you said it's just rough enough to be Moroccan, so that would do it for me. That'd be great.
Yeah, it's really cool, right?
Yeah.
If
But
you
what
got
you
there
don't-
and you got taken there in a limo and
doesn't do
it
it
was
for
all
me.
just you don't want it too international. Otherwise, you might as well just. It's like restaurants, right? It's nice to go to somewhere authentic and local, not just
Authentic and local. So any restaurant that has the word vegan after it or fusion is shit.
I love fusion food, but
Do
I've
you
never been to a good
really?
fusion restaurant.
I know fusion food you cook it by yourself is good.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
pretentious to cook fusion food.
Let's go to
But there's
a Guatemalan Italian fusion restaurant or whatever it is. No.
mate, I love Italian fusion. You like chunky chips with your pizza.
Pizza. Well, Italian fusion's Hawaiian, right? Hawaiian pizza.
God. Oh, mate, that is. I bet you like that as well, don't you?
I do like a Hawaiian pizza. Do you not? Do you really not? Is that bad?
I mean, I'm a dustbin. I'll eat anything that's left over, but I actually have to think about being quite such an animal when the kids leave Hawaiian over because they love it. And I don't begrudge it. I'll make them a Hawaiian pizza.
Got to put anchovies on it, so it's got that salty sort of taste to it.
Anchovies don't belong on Hawaiian pizza, you weirdo. You're putting anchovies with pineapple.
Yeah, it's like basically it's Chinese fusion, isn't it? Sort of sweet, sweet and sour.
Mate, I don't know.
You're gonna have to come round one night. We're gonna smash out some.
Yeah, the thing is, actually, there's a point in my brain that says that does make sense.
Try it.
No,
Honestly,
because the problem with that pineapple pizza is it's too sweet.
yeah, that's what the anchovies. So, how do we get from Morocco shooting Barbary partridges to Tesco's Hawaiian pizzas? But we did.
Tesco's, you're buying Tesco's pizzas. You don't make pizza.
No.
I mean, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, you drive to Tesco's.
So in that other room there is a bag of wraps that I bought just to berate a bag of wraps.
Pizza
Make
wraps.
your own damn pizza. Make your own
Yeah.
wraps. Make your own pizza dough. It's easy. Mate, go and look at the ingredients. You know what ingredients are in pizza dough?
Dough.
Cardium metasulfate. It doesn't taste the same without bicardium metasulfate.
So
No.
Rachel, my wife, has started making her own wraps.
Yeah, it's so much better.
It is. They're good, actually.
It's infinitely better. Those wraps, once you've had those wraps from the supermarket and then had a proper fresh one next to it, those wraps from the supermarket literally taste of Play-Doh. It's shite.
Yes. Right. Let's get back to something people actually might want to listen to.
Okay. What are you, mate? I mean, that is my really number one experience this season. I had some really good ones, so it's not an easy choice, but it was like going back home, right? I lived out there for 2 and a bit years. It was like going back home, but on but I was the gamekeeper, as the gun. Yeah.
Okay, I had a fantastic day this year, and I wasn't shooting.
Nice.
So my son's got a little bit older, and he tends to gobble up all the invites. Right, so I used to get invited shooting, and they now say, would Toby like to come shooting?
You've had enough, mate.
So I often reply, Toby's at school. That's okay, it's the Christmas holidays. Fuck. So I had a great day where a very generous friend of mine has had a very good year, and he decided to buy all his sort of pseudo god kids, because now he's rich. We're all like his best mate. So yeah,
I look forward to winning the lottery and we can be actual friends.
So I'll tell you a brilliant sentence. I took him stalking last week.
Yeah.
And this is genuinely okay. I'm just going to put it to go back 30 years. He grew up on a Dorset dairy farm, and at sort of 12, he used to have to take the cows to the dairy before he walked to school because they couldn't afford a car. Right. So I'm not kidding. And he uttered this phrase to me when I took him stalking last week. I'm really pissed off. One of my Maseratis has broken down. Right, so it's like, we'll call him Mike, because that's his name. You've changed, mate.
Oh,
It's
mate.
like, I haven't changed. I've just got really rich.
This is it.
So he's
I'm
had
just
quite-
allowed to be me. Finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's a really clever guy. He's he's very successful in life. He's absolutely lovely.
Power to him.
And he invited the kids on a day shooting in Dorset on a really nice shoot. Absolutely fantastic. Down at Sherborne.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was great. It was really good high birds.
Mike and Antonia?
Yes, down at Honeycomb.
Yeah, lovely.
Absolutely brilliant. They looked after them brilliantly, and they had some relative novice kids shooting, some more experienced kids shooting, and it was just a fabulous day that they could all experience a proper driven day where they could pull the trigger and not have to say, it's 30 birds, you got to stop, and get stuck into them. And it was... It was
Is that the one you filmed?
Yes.
Go on, plug it. Where are they going to find it?
So you can find that on my personal YouTube channel, which is normally fishing, but there's some shooting on it as well. So it's I can't remember what it's called. If you just type in my name, I think is the name of my channel.
I can't remember either.
No.
I'm subscribed. Once you subscribe to something, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So I filmed it and I put it on. My son shoots some fantastic birds, but the one bit that really makes me smile, and it made a couple of YouTube commenters cross, actually. So he stood on a drive and he shoots 5 incredibly tall pheasants. And I mean, they are right up there. Sort of the ones that take 4 seconds, 5 seconds to land behind you.
The ones that make you feel quite good.
Ones that make you feel really happy, and the ones that you stand behind.
And you hear them crashing into the trees behind you.
Best noise in the countryside is that hollow thud.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And a not-so-high bird came out, which he decided he was going to shoot.
Yeah.
Not unsafe. Anyway, the best bit is if you look at the video, is he turns round and looks at the camera and sort of makes that grimace noise. Yeah, that face of.
Sometimes you're just in the moment. I've shot a couple of low birds this season, and you know what? They're dead.
We've all done it.
I'd rather have done that than shot one that was a little too high.
So that was my favourite day. Because of that, because of the people we're with, because of the kids, because the host looked after everyone. So
is it as enjoyable watching your son shooting yourself? Different, just say different. That's the political answer.
No, it's not. I much prefer it myself. So next year, I will be writing to you all to tell you that Toby's grounded.
I thought you were going to say Toby's dead.
Yeah. Sorry, my son died. Actually, I've got to find it. I can't find it. There was a YouTube clip of an Austrian count. Have you seen this one?
No.
A hunting accident in Austria, obviously. Wild boar hunting accident. And it's really old. It's like from 2004 or 3. And unfortunately, somebody is fatally wounded on this driven hunt. And the count's being interviewed in German, straight Deutsch, and it's got the subtitles underneath. And the subtitles underneath, this is on like Channel 5 News in Austria. The subtitles underneath says, and of course, I have other nephews. Now, my mother is German, so I asked my mum what he actually says, and what he actually says is, it's very sad for my other nephews. So anyway, sorry, we're off topic.
That is brilliant.
If you can find it. I'm not sure it's still on there, but it was absolutely fantastic. So one of the other reasons that day was so good is because one of my things I dislike on shoots is mown paths to pegs, right?
Yeah, it's not as bad as a road to drive to your peg.
No, but I wouldn't appreciate that now. But if we're still doing this in 20 years' time, that might be top of my list.
It is different. It's a very good point.
Yeah.
You don't like mown paths to pegs?
No, I hate mown paths to pegs.
Well, but what if you get wet shoes?
Yeah, or muddy feet. What if your slippers get slightly grassy? I still want some visceral countryside.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's like we said. Like there needs to be something kind of gritty, rough, romantic, rough around the edges, authentic, actually authentically being in the countryside.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. And everyone does things differently, and there's obviously reasons for it. But if you go back and you look at photographs of Edwardian shoots, they didn't have mown paths to pegs, and they sort of went in their brogues and stockings and wandered out to stand in a muddy field just like we do. Anyway, so some things about shooting annoy me, and I don't know why it annoys me.
Well, I think it's not about... It's tough, right? Because inherently you can sound like you're dumping on something when you're not, actually. It's just about personal preference. And it's tough not to sound preachy when you're just having a good old rant about something you don't like. It's not to say that if someone wants a mown path to the peg, they can have it. If someone wants to be driven up to their peg and dropped off, they can have it. I prefer to do a little bit of work and get a little bit more nature-y.
Yeah, just so it looks a bit more raw. But I'm going to be completely hypocritical here, John. When I go fishing, I hate having to battle through the countryside to get to the river. I want a path.
Well, I think the thing is, right, once you get on peg, everything's curated for you once you're there. Somebody has chopped a tree down so you can see a hole to kill him. I think, and so it doesn't matter about that little bit of hardship. I think, John, if you're having to fight to get somewhere to fish, it's going to be really hard. You're going to lose a lot of tackle. And it's not going to be fun.
Yes.
And so actually, if you can, it does need to be a little bit more manicured, I think, with fishing in order to actually put a good show on. I guess you wouldn't mind battling to get to the bankside if the bankside was clean or not.
No, that's all. It's just so you can get to the bank. That's what I want, to be able to get to the bank without having to.
What if the bank's all overgrown?
It's not a problem because I mainly salmon fish, so I'm in the water.
On big rivers, yeah.
On big rivers, that's fine. And I'm, roll cast to fly. I only really fly fish, so I can roll cast all that.
You're so superior.
That's
so superior. Yeah. But can you method fish a carp?
I could not bloody couldn't. Carp, mate. No, wouldn't have a clue what to do, or spodding, whatever that is.
Spodding, yeah. That's for big pits. That one.
Is that for big pits? Yeah. You spotted a big pit, do you?
I spotted a few big pits in
I
my
bet
time.
You have.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, that's really cool. That is really cool. And the next thing before we finish up, I suppose, is what is the forecast for next season? We're not really gonna know yet, are we? I've heard some price increases coming already.
So food's coming down. From what we understand now, the price of pellets will come down.
This is good, but it has been righteously expensive.
Yeah, it has, but it's based on the wheat price and the soya price. Mm-hmm. So, but it looks like it's going to come down a little bit. Pulp prices, I don't know yet. That depends on the gas price. Trump's doing his utmost to destroy the world economy, so who knows on that one. But I think
if Tim disappears and never on the podcast again, then guess who did that? Probably your uncle knowing you. Secretly.
Yeah, he would be. Same here. I think broadly speaking, costs are going to remain where they are.
Yeah, up in line with inflation potentially, right? Yeah, everything.
I would estimate across the board when we talk about pheasants, we're going to be looking at £5 a bird. Rise, I guess. Most.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Including all your VATs.
Yeah, I've been hearing about £253 from most big shoots. I think, which is fair enough.
Yeah,
I would say it's fair enough. It'd be nice if it was free.
Yeah, it would be, but
£10 a bird. Well, I remember when I was in college and there was an advert in the Shooting Times for a driven shoot, 150 birds for £18 a bird. Right. I remember thinking at the time, that's quite good value.
Best driven day I ever bought myself was £12 a bird, including VAT.
Now that proves 15. You're old. 15%. When did it go from 15 to 17.5?
17.5, then 20, didn't it?
Yeah. I remember that, and I'm like, what are you going to do for this extra money? Nothing.
Actually, that's a serious point. So when you're looking at booking shooting next year, and it has gone up £2 or £3, it's not shoots profiteering. And I've just said costs are going to remain static. You've got to look back to the budget. So PAYE, so national insurance has gone up for businesses.
2.5%.
So that money's got to come from somewhere. So if they want to give their employee an inflation pay rise,
yes, and more importantly, right, all the people they're buying from have suffered this as well. So actually, as much as the price of wheat might not go up a lot, but it probably will. The people handling it still need a bit of money.
People are driving the tractor.
There's a lot of people and businesses who are now paying an extra 2.5% across the board, and that accumulates, right? Strangely,
it's through the supply chain. So in all seriousness, a £2.5 to £3 increase on the final product isn't the right word for when we're talking about shooting, but
the bird
price is probably still at no more profit than 24-25 season.
Yeah, right.
Because we've got these tax increases as businesses. It probably shouldn't affect your local DIY syndicate.
No more than going up in line with inflation like everything has, right?
Because your supply chain's shorter and you're not paying people and all that sort of stuff. So I think the outlook is broadly what we're looking at this year, a few quid increase. I think generally the whole economy is going to have less money in it. So we're going to have to look at how people look at how they spend their money. But we had a chat earlier on. And one of the things you do is you keep your hobbies up.
Yeah, this is
sailing, golf, or shooting.
Let's not lie and say this is a cheap hobby, but it can be done less expensively. We're talking about a syndicate you're starting up, just a little side one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You can go and have a good few days shooting for £1,000 to £2,000, and you can have a full season of fun for that. I remember when I was younger. I mean, I think my annual budget for shooting was about £500. Yeah. I had a great season, mate. I had an absolutely peachy season every season. I'd have a couple of small walked up day or mini driven days, sharing a peg with someone, and then I'd go beating at a couple of places.
I love sharing a peg. That's one of
Just
my...
go and enjoy time out in the field.
Yeah, sharing a peg's one of my favourite things to do.
I dislike not doing it.
I like it. It's good fun.
I think it's part of the thing. The last drive in Morocco, I'm there with Tom and Ollie, and we're taking shot on, shot off.
Yeah.
So take your shots, let you crack the gun, they load it, take it. How much fun you have.
Yeah.
And you're really rooting for them to just kill something.
Yeah. So
Or miss. And everything that happens is a potential joke and remember it. It's cool.
I like it when you're sharing the peg with the guys bought the day, and you say, well, you start, because that's the polite thing to do. And it's okay, what we'll do is it'll be 3 shots or 2 dead birds. Yeah, fine. So bang, bang, miss, reload, bang, miss. And you're sort of, my go. No, we'll make it 5 shots. You can't argue because they bought the day. But that all adds to the fun of the day.
Yeah, right. It can be very lonely stood by yourself. And there's definitely a room for like a quiet day occasionally. But, sharing memories, it's nice to share stories, but it never is quite as good as phoning a bloke who was there and going, mate, do you remember when we?
Yeah. And also, you've got to be a bit careful standing on your own for hours and hours and hours on a peg. That the monkeys don't get in your head and start chirping away, and you start losing concentration. I find when I've got someone with me, you concentrate on.
Well, it's 4 eyes, right? 2 brains.
Exactly.
You can chat and you do it, and then you can kind of.
And that's what guys who have loaders a lot. Sometimes will just have a stuffer.
Yeah.
For the same reason, it's quite often it's someone to talk to.
Yeah, right. I'm lucky. A lot of the days I do, I film, and it's cool because you'd be like, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
We just chat away and have a laugh.
But I think for anyone listening to this podcast, if you want to really maximise the amount of shooting you get for value for money, I think there is a real top tip I can give. And that is set a YouTube channel up.
I can assure you, it's just better to marry the right person, I think, rather than having to drag a camera around.
Sasha. So, on that note, John.
I'm looking forward to the summer.
Yes.
And honestly, just, start thinking about next season. I actually really enjoyed it. I sat down. I'm getting old, by the way. I sat down and thought, what would I like to do next season?
That's a brilliant thing.
As opposed to usually, it's like, that looks like a cool thing. Like the week or 2 weeks or a month before, there's a day of the threat available. I'm like, what would be cool?
So I've got some stuff that I genuinely want to do. Ptarmigan in Norway or Iceland.
Not next season. Just before you die.
When I can afford to do it.
I think that's quite reasonably priced.
But
obviously, getting there and taking a week off work is not.
Yeah, so you'd make it part of a work trip, wouldn't you? But it's
interesting.
Fly out there. So Ptarmigan's something I really want to do, but it has to be Scandi. I don't want to do it in Scotland.
With a shotgun.
I'd like to do it with a shotgun, but I don't think it's more rifling.
It's 2-2, yeah.
Yeah, but hey, horses for courses. I do fancy that. I really fancy that. Desperate to shoot a pronghorn antelope.
In Wyoming.
Fastest land mammal. That's something that does not with a shotgun.
Fastest
land antelope.
Yeah.
So that really excites me. I want to do that, and I would like to do some more woodcock shooting with my friends in North Wales. Those are my 3.
Sounds pretty reasonable. Wyoming, unfortunately, is a really long way away. Well, Tim, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you about the season, even though we really didn't talk about it at all.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, Johnny. As always, when I grow up, I want to be Johnny Carter.
No, mate, when I grow up... Well, to be fair, mate, you'd have to grow down quite a few years. When I grow up, I could actually be you. That's the difference between you and me. Guys, thank you for listening. If you've got any thoughts, questions, stories, additions, complaints, chuck them to production@tgsoutdoors.co.uk. There is a thing in the show notes for that if you want to check it out. Tim, appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you more, Johnny.
That's so cute.